this talked about in 2 Corinthians 12:14-15, where Paul says, "Now for the third time I am ready to come to you, and I will not be burdensome to you, for I do not seek yours but you. For the children ought not to lay up for the parents, but the parents for the children. And I will very gladly spend and be spent for your souls. Though the more abundantly I love you, the less I am loved." And so there he's talking about how he is like a parent to the Corinthians, and he uses the phrase "spend and be spent." And so it's the idea of, which I think is a pretty powerful phrase, where you're spending the things that you have, and even your own personal life is being spent for the benefit of someone else. And so I think that's kind of, that phrase should describe the life of all Christians, but particularly parents. And this is something that even people in the world understand, is that when you're having children, you are sacrificing. It's pretty inherent to having children, unless you're completely delinquent, that you are sacrificing for your children. And even if your children are reprobate, even if they provide you when they're adults, they do nothing for you, or if they die, or whatever it might be, even the process of sacrificing for your children, like you're talking about, is obedience to God, glorifying God. It's a picture of God. Even that itself is an intrinsic good and an intrinsic blessing.
And when you think about that picture, right, I mean, the church is very confused that we think now, the broad church thinks that we can add something to God, rather than all we do is take from God. If we did everything that we were supposed to do, we'd have nothing that he owed us at all, because we can't give him anything. All we can give him is perfect obedience, and that's just what's due him. And so when we think of this with our children, you make the sacrifices, you do these things, and maybe they do grow up reprobate. Maybe they do grow up in rebellion. In the end, the blessing is that's what God does for the majority of people in the world. There are many who find the path to destruction and few who find the path to life. And everyone who found the path to destruction, they sense God was their father. He provided for them. Their whole life, they lived by common grace from God. He gave to them their whole life, and in the end, they rebelled against him.
And one of the blessings of being a parent is you get put in situations where your selfishness has to die. I mean, that's one of the blessings of having children. I remember when my wife and I, that from the time when we were married until the time that our first child was born, it was a whole lot of bliss. I mean, I'm blessed to be married to a very lovely woman. And so, people talk about that first year of marriage is so hard. It wasn't for us. I mean, it was a whole lot of rainbows and butterflies. But then God gave us that first child. And after about one day of that first child, you realize that God gives you something that is just pure sucking need. And I mean, it's cute and it's fun and you love holding it, but it needs and it needs and it needs, and it does not care about you. Right. And so, what Paul is saying here about spend and be spent, the way I like to think about it is all those promises I made to my wife in my wedding vows about to have and to hold and for better or for worse, I didn't have to start paying on those until I had a child. And now all of a sudden I have to pay. I've got to spend. I've got to be spent. And then those children get older and you have to spend and be spent even more. And yet I need that, because as a human being, I am so full of selfishness that I need this thing to draw me out of myself, to make me pay, to make me sacrifice. And that's a blessing that's good for me. And I think that on that point, that's where a lot of people can see children as being a curse, because they don't want to give that up. They don't want sanctification at the point of their own pride and their own selfishness.
So a lot of the reason that people are saying they're a curse actually is part of the blessing. You're just misidentifying it as a curse.
Right.
This has been The Conquering Truth, a project of Reformation Baptist Church. If you found this helpful, you can visit us online at theconqueringtruth.com and subscribe here or in your favorite podcast app. Thanks for watching.